Is it a dirty cosmic snowball made of ice and dust and rock and gas? Is it a natural comet, or is it something else? Something maybe alien technology from someplace else? Well, that's the big question today. Welcome everyone to We Are Not Alone. I'm your host, May K. Dealer. We're here talking about 3I Atlas, that interstellar object that has consumed our thoughts since really July. And we are honored to have who is perhaps the most in-demand interview guest on the planet today when it comes to interstellar objects. Joining us now is Harvard professor, Dr. Avi Loeb. Thank you so much for joining us. We are honored. We know you're a very busy man.
Thanks for having me. It's a great pleasure.
Well, you've got quite a resume, and it would take forever to go through it. So just very briefly, I am going to introduce you. So interstellar objects are your thing, black holes, and ET life. So you join us with an update today. We're going to talk about 3I Atlas. It's coming very close to our planet, the third known interstellar object from out of the solar system to cruise through our cosmic neighborhood. We're honored to have you. As I said, you are a respected scientist, holding a PhD in plasma physics, a professor at Harvard. You've chaired the Department of Astronomy for years. You've written 8 books, including bestsellers, Extraterrestrial, The First Sign of Intelligent Life and Our Future in the Stars, and more. And you founded the Black Hole Initiative. So you told me I'm going to call you Avi, and I hope that isn't too casual. You are seen as a visionary leader to your supporters, and to your critics, you are known as a sensationalist, polarizing for sure, but an undeniably significant figure in science. So, Avi, who are you? What do you consider yourself to be?
I consider myself to express what sounds to me like common sense. And, I was born on a farm, pretty much grounded in nature. And I don't really care much about what people say, because very often they say the wrong things. And if you subscribe to social media and pay too much attention to the likes that you get, you are growing probably in the wrong direction. And we've known that from history. And as a scientist, I have the privilege of attending to evidence. And when something looks strange, I would like to discuss it, point it out, because that's the only way by which we might recognize that among the rocks that enter the solar system, there might be a tennis ball that was thrown by a neighbor. And that would be the most important revelation to humanity ever, because we might realize that we are not at the top of the food chain within the Milky Way galaxy. And if there is someone more accomplished than we are, perhaps it will inspire us to do better. Because right now we focus on a very small rock that makes maybe 3 millionths of the mass of the sun. That's Earth. But there is much more real estate far out. There are 100 billion stars just in the Milky Way galaxy, and there are about 1 trillion galaxies in the observable volume of the universe, and many more beyond what we can see. And so there is a sense of cosmic modesty that we lack, because most of the stars formed billions of years before the sun, and it's very likely that there were more accomplished space entrepreneurs than Elon Musk since the Big Bang.
Wow. I was going to ask you, because there's so much criticism, and I love your open mind, and we need people like you, and we're so grateful for your expertise. You kind of said you don't care, so you probably already answered it, but how do you deal with the criticism? Because I know you take a lot of it. People think, look, it's just a comet.
Yeah, well, what they do is basically behave like artificial intelligence systems. And those AI systems that we often use are as good as their training data set. And so most of these experts, or self-declared experts, are relying on icy rocks, the type of things that they were studying for decades. But the point is, we know there are things beyond that, because we launched technological equipment to space. And I'm just saying, please include that in your training data set. That's not such an exaggerated request, because we know that near Earth are plenty of objects that humanity launched. And in fact, there is some confusion about that. Those Comet experts, they cataloged a near-Earth asteroid, an object that came close to Earth on January 2nd, and then realized within a day the Minor Planet Center, the official body that is cataloging these, announced that, this one is actually following the path of the Tesla Roadster car that was launched by SpaceX in 2018. And therefore, it's not a rock, as we thought. It's actually a car. And the only reason they realized that is because we know what humanity launched. But if someone else far out in another near another star launched another type of spacecraft, we would not be aware of the trajectory that it's supposed to take, and therefore we would, if we are subscribing just to the notion that there are space rocks out there, we would say it's a comet or an asteroid. And that's a mistake that is easy to make if you have very limited data. Even if you see gas and dust around an object, it doesn't mean that it's a natural object, because you don't judge a book by its cover. It may be just the skin of the object that collected ice and dust along its journey and has nothing to do with the interior.
Okay, let's just talk about 3I Atlas. So the third object, possibly a comet, whatever, to enter our solar systems in our cosmic neighborhood now. So it's supposed to be closest to Earth on December 19th. Anything new that we know about it? Now, people like NASA the officials at NASA say, oh, we believe it's a comet, but perhaps it is not a comet. Perhaps it's an alien technology disguised as a comet. What new information do we have about this that you can share with us today as we approach the perigee to Earth? And please let people know that it's going to be very far away from Earth, like 170 million miles away. We don't have a problem or anything to be scared about, or do we?
No, we don't, because, we tend to think that even if there is a visitor to the solar system, it will probably just focus on us. It's not at all clear, because the human species existed only over the past few million years. That's a 0.1% of the age of the Earth, and not to speak about the ages of other stars. And a journey takes about 1 billion years throughout the Milky Way galaxy. So whoever sent equipment in our direction didn't have us in mind. And it's sort of like arriving late to a party and thinking that someone was waiting to dance with you. That is a ridiculous notion. And so my point is, we should not assume anything, but just observe it. And based on the information that we get about our dating partner, we can decide whether, what its nature is. And that's the usual practice in blind dates. You don't know in advance who the dating partner is, and the best way to find out is not to speak and express an opinion ahead of time, but just collect as much data as possible. Because in this case, there are also, if it happens to be alien technology, there is obviously a threat to Earth, and we would like to know that, even if the chances are small. And it's sort of a black swan event that we need to protect ourselves against. And in the coming decade, we'll have many more interstellar objects. And my recommendation is to rank each and every one of them from 0 to 10. There is this classification scale that I came up with called the Loeb scale,
yes,
where 0 is a natural object, 10 is a technological object, and we need to decide what each object might be. Those are objects to be discovered by the Rubin Observatory in Chile. Now, with respect to this one, what we learned recently is, at first, the reason I suspected it might be technological is because its trajectory is aligned with the planets in moving around the sun, and the chance of that happening at random is 1 in 500. And what we are seeing now is that indeed this anti-tail that it had from the beginning, which is a jet coming from the object towards the sun, it seems to persist even now. We have a second image from the Hubble Space Telescope that indicates a jet coming from the object towards the sun and not away from the sun, the way cometary tails behave. That's an anomaly. We need to explain that, to understand that. In fact, as of this morning, there was a report about the jet wobbling, as if it's sort of like the light beam from a lighthouse that is wobbling. And we need to understand why this happens. This anti-tail extends to 1 million kilometers. We've never seen anything like it for any comet.
Okay, Avi, this is fascinating. We're going to take a quick break. And we will be right back on We're Not Alone continues. Stay where you are. Welcome back, everyone, to this very special edition of We Are Not Alone. Dr. Avi Loeb is joining us, Harvard astronomer, talking to us about 3I Atlas. Is it a comet or is it something else? So fascinating discussion. Avi, these anomalies that you have talked about, surely NASA is aware of these. And I did watch the NASA press conference a couple weeks ago where they said, yeah, we believe it's a comet, it's a comet. If they knew it wasn't a comet or suspected it wasn't a comet, would they tell us?
Yeah, I think so. I think NASA is a bureaucratic body, and the press conference they had was handled by officials, which I would think is not the best approach to disclosing interesting information. You want the scientists who work on analyzing the data from the Webb telescope, from the Hubble telescope, from other NASA assets. But we didn't see those at the press conference. And frankly, the officials just released fuzzy images that were not particularly exciting. So it was a disappointment for the public. And at the same time, we had some images from amateur astronomers that were far more informative about the many jets coming out of 3I Atlas. So I don't think NASA would purposely hide information, but I do think that their heart is not in the right place, which is let's focus on the science, admit what we don't know. And they didn't really discuss any of the anomalies that I mentioned. There is another anomaly that is this object is shedding mostly nickel with very little iron. And the only place where we find that is in industrially produced nickel alloys. Usually all astronomical objects have comparable levels of nickel and iron. And that is a surprise and perhaps related to some technological makeup of the object. So they should have discussed those things that we don't fully understand, like the anti-tail, the nickel versus iron, the fact that the object lies in the plane of the planets around the sun. And, they could have said, look, these are not explained. They may be just rare properties of an object that we are lucky to find in our backyard. But they should have admitted what we don't know and what we don't understand, because that's the truth. Science is work in progress. And the only reason we want science to be funded is in order to find answers to questions that are mysterious, like, are we alone? And you can't excite the public by tampering down the most interesting anomalies and saying it's a comet and basically telling the public what the public should believe.
Yeah. And if you can, I hate to say dumb it down, but just make it simple for us. How is this moving on its own? What trajectory does it take? Is it anti-gravitational? Does it have its own jets? And where is it now? And what are the possible consequences if it is alien technology?
Well, the object did not maneuver significantly as of yet. It follows gravity, the gravitational, mostly gravity. There is an indication, a clear detection by many standard deviations, a very clear detection of non-gravitational acceleration, where the trajectory, the path of the object is slightly modified by some additional force other than gravity. And that could be the result of the object losing mass, because it's just like a jet plane or a rocket that is recoiling as a result of shedding mass in the opposite direction. That's what propels rockets. Now, we don't know if that is a result, this mass loss is a result of natural process of pockets of ice on the surface of a rock that get sublimated, that get evaporated by sunlight, or it could be thrusters in a technological device. We don't know the actual reason, and one way to figure it out is, of course, to in the coming days, to observe those jets that are seen coming from 3I Atlas. The most prominent right now is this anti-tail that is going towards the sun, very, very unusually for a comet, if it is natural. But if we measure the speed of the gas in that anti-tail in the jet, and we infer the composition of that jet, we could figure out if it's the sublimation of ice that propels it, that launches it, or maybe something technological, because for chemical propulsion in rockets, we usually get speeds that are an order of magnitude larger than you expect from pockets of ice warmed by sunshine. And for ion thrusters, we get 100 times faster exhaust speed. So just by observing these jets, I think we can pretty much learn about what the nature of the object is.
Yeah, because that was my next question. People say to me, well, who cares? It's a comet, it's a what, who cares?
Well, we definitely care about that because if there is a visit by alien technology to the inner solar system, we don't know if we're dealing with a friendly visitor or with a serial killer in case they decide to visit Earth. And that would suggest a whole plan associated with planetary defense. Right now, we're thinking only about rocks that by chance happen to impact the Earth, like the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs 66 million years ago. But in principle, if you have a technological device, it may maneuver and might have an intent for the visit that is much more difficult to protect against. And there would need to be a significant amount of money, maybe a significant fraction of the military budgets worldwide allocated to planetary defense. And by that, I mean $1 trillion a year, because right now we're spending $2.4 trillion a year on military budgets worldwide. So with $1 trillion a year, it will be a big deal. You can't just say, who cares? If we decide that there is a potential threat to Earth from alien technology, it would become one of the major items in the news. And it's not just the conflicts on territories on this rock, which, if you think about it, is very narrow-minded for us to just imagine this being the most important item in the universe. In fact, there is much more real estate out there that we should worry about.
Avi, let me ask you, you know so much about this. Have you had any threats to shut up?
Not at all.
No.
I have, I should say, about 5 million readers of my essays on medium.com every month in recent months. And there will be a Netflix documentary about my work. And people who know me, that will come out in 2026. People who know me at my university, Harvard or elsewhere, they are very respectful and they know my way of thinking, which is very often outside the box. And the only people who are really pushing against me and trying to ridicule this discussion are either not very smart or simply don't know me.
Okay. A good spot to take a break. We'll be back right after this when We're Not Alone continues. Stay with us. Welcome back, everyone, to this very special edition of We're Not Alone. We're honored to have Harvard professor Dr. Avi Loeb with us, perhaps the most in-demand expert talking about 3I Atlas in the world. Avi, a couple things to ask you. On the Loeb scale, what are the odds that this is an alien something? And how soon will we know? And I've got an interesting question for you. Don't hate me for it. It's not very scientific. What's your gut tell you? Is there any room for intuition in science?
There is room for intuition in science, but in this particular case, we are about to get a flood of data as the object comes closest to the sun in a few days. As the object comes closest to Earth in a few days. I would rather wait a few weeks until I see the data before expressing my value for rank for this object on the Loeb scale. So let's just be patient and speak again, perhaps in January, once I know the verdict from based on the data that is collected.
And do you feel confident we will have answers? I know we have to wait, but will there be definitive answers? Because to those of us lay people, the pictures just look fuzzy. We don't know what we're looking at. Will there be answers?
Yeah, I do think that with the use of spectrographs to measure the emission from the gas, so we can find the fingerprints of various molecules and atoms in the plume of gas surrounding 3I Atlas, as well as measure the speed of the gas, I think that would make it quite clear as to how much mass was lost. And if, for example, the object lost a significant fraction of its mass in these jets, and we infer that the jets have all the characteristics of the natural cometary jets, then I think we can pretty much rest assured that it's a natural object. However, if, for example, we observe when it passes close to Jupiter and then it deposits some devices at the Lagrange point of Jupiter, because it will pass exactly at the right distance from Jupiter, where Jupiter's gravity dominates over the Sun's gravity, which is another anomaly. Why does it arrive exactly at that distance to Jupiter? So if it does that, and we see some devices being deployed there, we would know it's technological. So there are ways to decide one way or another in a clear fashion. And I hope that within a month or two, I will know the answer, and I'll be glad to tell you. It's just like the work of a detective. It's better to wait for all the clues to come along and then make a decision without prejudice.
Yes, and you are in the trenches, and we appreciate that. Very quickly, because I have a very important question to ask you before we wrap up. Something with AI and YouTube and some AI impersonating you. What's going on with that? Can you fill us in?
Well, a couple of weeks ago, I got a lot of emails from fans. I usually get hundreds of them every day from all around the world. And some of them were asking me questions about a new channel on YouTube that is apparently showing videos of me saying things. And I immediately realized that this is fake. These videos were created by artificial intelligence, AI, and they're basically putting words in my mouth that I've never approved. And I wrote to YouTube and I told them this story was reported on my blog on medium.com. And as a result, there was a news outlet, Futurism, that reported about it. And then I was invited to speak on NBC News about it that evening. And I also consulted with legal advisors at Harvard University. So after I mentioned all of that to the YouTube team, within an hour, this channel was removed. I must say that to their credit, they also released an official statement that was mentioned on NBC News. So at the end of the day, this channel was removed. But this is a risk, a challenge that we face in the future, whether, how to authenticate content that we find in video or audio forms on the internet. And in this case, it was easy because if you were to watch the clock behind me, it wouldn't really move. The handles wouldn't move in those fake videos. Also, I changed the color of my tie from red to blue just to make sure that all my followers will know that I'm not wearing a red tie anymore in these video interviews.
Well, that's disturbing. I'm glad you got it sorted out. The age of disclosure. Everybody is talking about this documentary. What do you think about it? Do you think there's been a government cover-up? Do you think we have aliens among us?
I don't know, because I was never privy of the information the government has. I do think that if there is any unusual materials or data that they collected 50 years ago, that they should release it to the public, to scientists, because it's irrelevant for national security as to what technologies were used by adversarial nations 50 years ago. There is no risk to national security. But frankly, I don't know if they have such interesting information. And I'm leading the Galileo project, where we build the observatories. We have 3 of them. One in Massachusetts, another one in Pennsylvania, and a third one in Nevada, where we monitor the sky, millions of objects every year, analyze the data with machine learning software, and try to figure out if there is anything unusual in our sky. And if we will not find any extraterrestrial objects out there. I'm happy to provide all the tools that we developed to the Pentagon so that they can use it for national security purposes. If we do find it, I'll be glad to speak with you and discuss what we found.
So, Avi, am I safe to assume that you have never had a personal encounter of your own, perhaps seen a UAP, UFO, or contact with non-human intelligence, anything like that in your personal life?
Yes, you are correct. I never had that, but I take seriously reports from others, including within government. And but until I verify that something unusual exists using scientific instruments, I would not necessarily believe those reports.
Avi, we're out of time. I've been reading your articles on Medium. Where can people read about you? Would that be the best source? And if they would like to get in touch with you, are they welcome to? Tell us how we can reach you.
They are most welcome. I don't see myself as different from the public. I just have this fortune of being able to pursue my curiosity using the scientific tools that I developed over the years. And you can find my writings, my essays on a daily basis on medium.com, Loeb.medium.com. And then, of course, there are two books that I wrote recently, Extraterrestrial and Interstellar. You might want to watch the Netflix documentary that comes out next year. And hopefully the best is yet to come. That's the approach that I take. And I'm optimistic that we will learn much more about our cosmic environment, because very often life is a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you don't search for something better, you will never find it.
So wise. We got to end it right there, because we couldn't end it in any more of a perfect way. What an honor, sir. What an honor. Thank you, Dr. Avi Loeb, Harvard professor. And we know there's no threat from 3I Atlas, but we're not sure what it is. And I know you will keep us posted. Thank you so much for joining us, sir, and good luck. And thanks everyone for joining us here on this edition of We're Not Alone. I'm May K. Bueller with Queen City News Plus. We'll see you next time.
Queen City News Plus. Just search Queen City News on your smart TV's app store.